Togo has long been mired in political crisis and currently is experiencing a serious social-political crisis. Mistreatment and arbitrary arrest are on the rise. To give us an insight into the current situation is a prominent Togolese political activist and writer and the executive director of the Togolese Civil League, and a non-governmental organization that promotes democracy and human rights in Togo. Farida Nabourema, it's a pleasure to have you on Sahara TV once again.
Thank you. It is an honor to be here today.
Let me start by asking you, what are the most important human rights issues in Togo today?
That question is very tricky because saying that we have any human rights respected in Togo at all is a myth. The Togolese are denied of all the most basic fundamental human rights, especially when it comes to civil rights. This is a country that has been ruled by the oldest military regime on the African continent. The Gnassingbe dynasty has been in power for the past 54 years, and all we know in Togo is terror. Tyranny has been the mode of ruling. The Togolese are denied freedom of speech, freedom of association. The press is constantly persecuted. Citizens get killed in all impunity. So there is not really a single type of right that we can say is facing an attack from the government. All forms of rights in Togo are currently suppressed by the regime of Faure Gnassingbe.
That is extremism to the highest regard. Talking about the government's crackdown on legitimate opposition activities, how has this affected the rights, human rights in Togo?
Well, the regime in Togo does not want to yield power. They want to rule in tyranny forever. Faure Gnassingbe ruled Togo for 38 years. When he died, his son did a coup, and he has been the president since 2005, making him the longest serving president in West Africa. As a result, any form of opposition in Togo is crushed. Dissidents are arrested, persecuted, killed. Journalists are thrown into jail as if they were bandits. The government bans all forms of gathering, even small-scale gatherings of a few group of people that want to come together and demand accountability is severely repressed. We live in a situation in Togo where the government has full control of the political apparat, the executive, the judiciary, the parliamentary. They vote laws that they can't even respect themselves, especially laws that actually are restrictive in nature. They still cannot respect those laws. As I'm speaking to you right now, we have over 100 political prisoners in Togo. And mind you, many of those political prisoners are not even held in the official jails of Togo. They are held in private detention centers, which Faure Gnassingbe has built specifically to torture political prisoners.
That is serious. Now, how widespread is this harassment and detention of human rights defenders in Togo at this point in time? And earlier on, you talked about the fact that even other arms of government, the judiciary arm of government, as well as the legislature, is under the ambits of the executive. I mean, one begins to wonder how widespread is this harassment of political rights defenders in Togo.
Just last week, 3 journalists were arrested simply because they discussed the condition in which some ministers of Togo have been manipulating public opinions. We have 2 ministers in Togo who open their own private churches, who portray themselves as pastors, and who are using biblical words to justify oppression and justify tyranny. They circulate messages like disobeying authority is a sin, and the citizens must obey authority no matter how faulty they are. So those journalists were questioning the issue of separation of state and religion. And because of that show, they were arrested last week and they were thrown to jail. When they were arrested, they spent more than 48 hours before there was even a complaint about them. It only took the phone call of a minister to the police for them to be arrested and thrown into jail like if they were some criminals. On Saturday, a very prominent Togolese activist named Fubikataku, who has been at the front line of fighting this regime, one of the most peaceful activists we have in Togo because he truly, genuinely believed in non-violence resistance. He was arrested in the early mornings at his home and he has been thrown to jail. And he's accused of promoting violence when the funny thing is he's not the kind of person who dissuade people from engaging in violent activities despite the repression from government. For Kataku, I have to add, is a paraplegic. He's completely handicapped. He needs aid and he needs support to be able to move. He's in a wheelchair and cannot fend for himself, but he's being detained under very horrendous conditions, and the government does not even want to allow him to see his family or his lawyers. We have some political prisoners who have been in prison for the past 3 years, and none of them have been able to see their lawyers till day. They haven't even appeared in court. Some of them have lost total control of their legs, and we lost 7 political prisoners in the course of 2021. They died under unknown circumstances as a result of torture.
That's serious. I'd like to ask, what about the opposition leaders themselves? What are they doing at this point in time to stem this tide? I remember you started a movement way back in 2011, the Faure Must Go movement, where you organized Togolese youth to stand against the dictatorial regime of Faure Gnassingbe. What is the civil society and the civil society organizations doing at this point in time? What are the practical initiatives that they are taking in order to oppose this regime?
Civil society in Togo has been extremely crushed and weakened. Society in Togo is facing an unprecedented level of abuse. This is a country where there is no ability for civil society to hold government accountable, where civil society leaders are persecuted, their families are persecuted. So under those circumstances, civil society is extremely limited. Now, in terms of the opposition, I don't know if you remember 2017 and 18, the Togolese people protested massively, and they held those protests for several months despite the repression. But unfortunately, we had an opposition leadership that at some point started getting divided on many fronts, especially when the parliamentary and the presidential elections were coming. And last year's presidential election were another fiasco, which only led to the dislocation of the opposition because each party wanted to be represented in that election, an election that we in civil society knew wouldn't yield any positive result because the government controlled all the apparels of the electoral process. Not only they have voted electoral laws that cannot guarantee transparency, but they have appointed single-handedly the members of the electoral commission. So in civil society, we were totally against the idea of even participating in elections that are only going to legitimize that dictatorship. But opposition leaders were different on that. Many of them chose to run, and they ran, and of course the government claimed victory like they have always done for the past decade. So now we have an opposition that is completely divided, leaders that are fighting each other on each front, and a civil society that is completely weakened as a result of repression. Many activists are in exile, others are in jail. So the situation is extremely difficult. But despite that, I have to salute the resilience of Togolese citizens because they are still fighting. They might not be receiving as much attention as other big nations out there, but people are still on the ground making demands, fighting, challenging, and it's the result of this resistance that is leading to people getting arrested and being thrown in jail. So there wouldn't have been any political arrest if people were simply accepting their condition. It is because they are fighting back that they are being persecuted, they are being tormented by the regime.
Now, let me take you up on these. Are there real possibilities, real and concrete possibilities for Togolese to overcome this situation? And if you will, I'll crave your indulgence to also ask what the international community has been doing as far as these matters are concerned. Because we all know that no nations will intervene if they don't have conveniences. So what are your take on these issues?
Unfortunately, Togo, I will say, has been one of the unluckiest nations in the West African region because our case doesn't seem to cause enough interest from the international community. And unfortunately, in the past, the only governments that took interest in Togo didn't come to support the people of Togo in their plea for justice and democracy, but they rather sidelined with the government to help repress us and help crush opposition and help destroy resistance on the ground. So the government of Togo is extremely good at one thing. That thing is propaganda. They invest a lot of money into that. For example, the contract lobby firms in Washington, D.C., who are paid a lot of money to help polish the image of Faure Gnassingbe. They like portraying Faure Gnassingbe as a progressive president. So internationally, it is really hard for us to show the reality of the problems that we have in Togo, which is why it's really important for us to have platforms like your media, Sahara or Sahara TV, to be able to share what we are going through. We want the international community to do more than just issue one statement here and there every quarter or every year. We want to see concrete actions, especially for world powers that have the ability to impact governance in Togo. They can leverage that power to demand certain things from the government of Togo, certain reforms that can reduce the level of abuse and repression against civilians. We find it appalling that opposition is being crushed, civilians are being arrested, journalists are being detained, but all the major international partners, especially organizations like the ECOWAS, the African Union, are remaining silent, and they continue to stay silent until things get out of proportion. And when they come in later on, their solutions is always to create a dialogue that will eventually lead to appeasing the masses and let the government continue to stay in power. And we also see other international actors like France that has always supported the military regime in Togo. The president of France, Emmanuel Macron, recently received president of Togo, Faure Gnassingbe. This is a way of legitimizing a regime that we all know is extremely brutal. And France will not stop cooperating with Togo and supporting Togo financially in their quest for control all over West Africa. And even the United States government hasn't done enough. They haven't done enough in terms, last year during the presidential elections, we had observation groups that were banned to observe, civil society observation groups, were banned to observe the elections. And even American partners who tried to rally Togo, who tried to support civil society in Togo to observe the elections, were arrested and deported. And beyond the statement issued by the then administration on behalf of the State Department, we didn't really see any actions. We have to see the government of Togo actually sanctioned for their actions. We know the names of those who kill Togolese civilians. We know the name of those who butcher Togolese protesters. We know the names of those who are torturing our comrades in prisons. We have the information, we have the data, we have the proofs. All it takes is political will to be able to take sanctions against them. We have seen the US government, for example, take sanctions against human rights abusers in other countries like the DRC, like Kenya, or even Nigeria. We want those sanctions to be extended to the government of Togo, to the ministers in Togo who are responsible for human rights abuses, to the ministers who think they can spend billions on purchasing surveillance software such as Pegasus or Donut Team to be able to infiltrate dissident groups and crack down protests. And even those military officials who take part in the abuse of human rights, they must all be sanctioned. And until that is done, the people of Togo will continue to be fighting helplessly, endlessly, trying to bring an end to this military regime.
Now, realistically, how many chances do you give to the democratic demands having any success?
I cannot put a number on this. It is impossible for us to predict the chances or even to predict the time. This is a struggle that our grandfathers have fought, our parents have fought, and we, the younger generation, are fighting today. This has been 54 years of struggle. And despite the fact that in Togo we feel completely hopeless and helpless, I do believe that there have been some progress made, because now many more Togolese are capable to speak their minds and demand accountability and to confront the regime on many fronts. It may take up more years, or it could even happen overnight. I mean, we have seen other dictatorships fall overnight when everybody didn't even imagine, when nobody even thought it was possible. So it's something that could happen in Togo at any point. It is hard to tell when, but I know it will happen because the people of Togo are fed up and they want change.
Now, finally, talking about the broader climate of political dissent among Togolese themselves, how will you assess the readiness and the consciousness at the level of Togolese to ensure that the democratic demands are upheld?
When I saw the Togolese people took on the streets in 2017 for months to demand change, and the Togolese diaspora rising in every single corner of the world, from Brazil to France, to Germany, to Canada, and even in South Korea, Togolese diaspora was protesting, and the Togolese citizens were protesting in all the corners of Togo, including in the most remote villages that nobody could ever imagine even exist in Togo. I realized that our people wanted change and they were ready to fight for it. The level of commitment that they demonstrated in protesting for months, despite the severe repression, the crackdown, the killing of protesters, of children as young as 9, the beating of women that were recorded and shared on social media, the people of Togo were decided to fight. But unfortunately, we didn't obtain the support needed, and the international actors who came in, such as the ECOWAS, to help the situation, unfortunately ended up help consolidate power. We have learned our lessons, and we are continuing to learn our lessons. It's going to be a matter of trial and fail. We have failed at one battle, but it doesn't mean we have lost the war. We will continue to fight for change in Togo, no matter how much it costs us, and some will fall and some will pick it up and continue. This is how we have sustained this struggle for many years, and we will continue fighting until we eventually win.
We hope that this message gets across to the international community to ensure freedom and accountability in Togo. Thank you, Farida Nabourema, for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.